Dear God. They're copying details I invented on Game of Thrones Wiki in this. Filling in gaps in their knowledge. I'm doing more internal continuity than they are. Explain that in a minute. Hi there. This video is my review and reaction to episode 8.6 of Game of Thrones, The Iron Throne, which is the series finale. It's been a week since it aired. It's Memorial Day now in America, and I wanted to have some time to go over the facts, see what news might come out. They actually didn't put out an inside the episode for this video, or that game reveal thing. And I was waiting for that behind-the-scenes documentary that they just put out Sunday night, which was more about building, and I'm going to make a separate thing on that, but it didn't really give any story info. And because I was waiting to see how everyone else was covering it, there have already been a lot of better reviews of this by other YouTube channels. They did a better job than I did, more thoroughly, some of them more angry, some of them more even-handed. I'm going to list them off at the end of this. So why am I making this video here? I want you to see their reviews as the definitive ones, but I'm making this to bring up a few points, 4 points that I don't feel that other videos covered specifically. The first point. Reviews keep pointing this out in all of them, and if you're one of my subscribers, please comment on this below. Yeah, Benioff and Weiss directed this episode personally, and I'm seeing a lot of reviews, both video and text, pointing out there's just these really long tracking shots of actors walking around with no dialogue, playing off their facial expressions. I've remarked on this before, I've predicted this, it's just, this is a consistent pattern, it's just they're doing it really heavily in this episode. Mahler, a different YouTube channel, put together a compilation of the whole episode, all the scenes don't have dialogue in them. For a supersized episode, there were only 18 minutes of dialogue. And there's this chart here, which I'm putting in the video now, that someone figured out, we can quickly check how much dialogue was in every episode of the show by just looking at the subtitles and doing a word count, that the word count of the subtitles steadily and surely dropped from one season to the next. That when I said, I expect we'll see Benioff unfettered in the Long Night episode, because it's what he wanted to do, that was officially the least dialogue of the entire TV series, ever. And the series finale isn't that much far behind it. And I thought it was so obvious at this point, at first I didn't think I'd even have to remark on it. That just, isn't everyone so used to this that they stopped caring? Why is everyone suddenly complaining, oh man, there's no dialogue in this? Where were you in season 7 when it was all just about these performances and these faces? But on the other hand, yeah, it was at a higher level than ever before. Just these long, Emmy-baiting shots of Dinklage walking around, of Kit Harington walking around, just making a serious face. This is not a story thing, it's they want these actors to win awards or just show them off. And based on their own comments and their DVD commentary, this is what they think good writing is. That hilarious video of Cogman saying, I'm a writer because I can have a scene with no dialogue in it, playing it off the actor's face. I mean, he said this on video. This is what they believe. This is their creative style, which is really the kid who flunked out of writing school and just goes, oh, I know more than the textbook does. This is a dream. And even as Dorne or Sansa or the other storylines fell apart in season 5, people defended that, like, the Aria storyline was still good. As much as I hate to say it, that's the one they really cared about, more people. And in some ways I don't blame them, like, why do they care about these Dorne characters they never met before versus Aria, who they loved for 4 years? And rather than fix other storylines, no storyline that got bad was ever truly fixed. That instead of improving, Dorne never got better, Sansa never got better. They just leaned heavily on fan favorites in later seasons. Fan favorite actors, really. Just, it turned into the Kit Harington show. Harington himself has even complained he had to go to therapy. He was under so much stress that season 5 onwards, they were focusing so much of it on his shoulders that he was carrying the weight of the show, as was Maisie Williams. Well, who still likes Aria the character at this point? I like the Aria Gendry stuff by episode 2, but then she leaves, and they turned her into a Mary Sue by killing the Night King. And some people will instinctively, I've seen news sites launching into defense of, how dare you say Aria is a Mary Sue, we love her. I cared about that character too. The character no longer exists. It's this stereotype of Maisie Williams' performance, and they wrecked it. They're playing favorites with the actors. And what did she even do in the second half of the season after killing the Night King, something which, as everyone has pointed out, had nothing to do with her entire story arc or setup? They themselves have admitted it was cool because it was so random and you wouldn't expect Arya to do it because it has nothing to do with her storyline. What did we see her do in the second half of the season? Nothing. And I said this in my episode 8.5 review that I put out. The entire destruction of King's Landing sequence was played off of her facial reactions. And they say this in the inside the episode. We wanted people to care, and yeah, but we don't really care about all these commoners, so let's play the whole thing off of Maisie Williams. Aria. And I just saw that whole behind-the-scenes thing from last night on how they built a fully realized King's Landing set. It was a full city street plus multiple alleyways in order to destroy it. And you're wondering, where did the time and effort and millions of dollars, this is the most expensive season, where did all of those resources go? They said, we can't just destroy city streets in Dubrovnik. They're real historical sites where we normally film King's Landing. So they just, in an empty parking lot, built this entire city. And I don't have screenshots yet because they're locked, but those are functional buildings. These aren't just cardboard. They built an entire fully realized city street and then destroyed it with real fire, pyrotechnics. And it's empty spectacle. Well, and just the hundreds of people who put their heart and soul into that and didn't realize it's just vanity shots of Maisie Williams. This is why we spent 7 months building this fully realized King's Landing set. So the destruction of the city can show off Maisie, just as killing the Night King was showing off Maisie. And so we see that again in this episode, that it's just showing off the actors' faces, showing off the actors' faces. I fear for Star Wars. What happens when these idiot writers get out in the real world? And like Cogman went over to the new Lord of the Rings project at Amazon. When he's faced with a room full of other writers, how will they react to that he thinks this is what writing is, wholeheartedly? And yes, they're being put up for Emmy nominations this year, all of the core cast members. So, point one, I thought I wouldn't have to point this out because I thought people were numb to it, but yeah, as I've been saying since the beginning, particularly hard since season 5, it's just showing off the actors' faces. Why else do you think there's these long tracking shots with no dialogue? If you disagree, explain. Why aren't people having dialogue, conversations? Point 2, and this is more general, just details were utterly sloppy story-wise, that things are falling into place in dreamlike fashion, much as we saw with the White Hunt last year. For starters, they made no real attempt to explain why Daenerys was attacking innocent, unarmed people. The plot logic was absurd. Everyone's going, why didn't she just fly to the Red Keep? And they're kind of going, oh, well, they're being used as human shields. If that was your intent, they then changed it, apparently, to her deliberately saturation bombing the city block by block, killing unarmed women and children. why? And they don't have the character actually voice an explanation for this, of, was it to punish them even though they weren't really loyal to Cersei? And it's back up and realize Daenerys isn't a real person, and this might be a relic of an earlier storyline, we don't know. A lot of people suspect that originally Cersei was going to go full Mad Queen on us, and basically hold the city hostage with wildfire caches hidden throughout the city, and Daenerys would go, okay, well, you're using human shields, fine, I'll attack anyway. Sort of like the way Hiroshima or Dresden were bombed in World War II. Well, okay, you're using human shields, that's not going to deter me. And there's a difference between ruthlessly killing your enemies, ruthlessly killing enemies knowing civilian casualties will get in the way, and third, deliberately attacking innocent people you don't need to attack in order to defeat your enemy. That makes no sense. And it really feels like another one of those things they changed at the last minute. Every major change from books to TV series, which we all ended up hating, was a last-minute change which apparently Benioff came up with in his writing shed without advice from other writers, in a big burst of creativity of, let's have Stannis defeated, let's have Talissa, let's do Dorne even though we're already filming. And every major change was a snap decision. This doesn't seem to be any different. That I don't know. There's a lot of rumors floating around. I really don't like to put stock in those unless I can verify them. That it really seems that at the least Cersei was going to have a miscarriage at some point. That there were so many reports about that from other leakers that turned out to be true. And the idea that this would be Cersei going crazy out of grief. And that they changed this, I'm worried that the theory is they changed this to Daenerys, from Daenerys rationally attacking through human shields to Daenerys going crazy to get Emilia Clarke an Emmy Award, because they're annoyed they never won her an award. That what was the highlight of last episode? I'm sorry I keep doubling back to it, but that epic shot of her nonverbal rage face as she's contorting her face in rage and realizing, I need to start killing civilians. There's no dialogue in it. She doesn't say anything, but when you look at the behind-the-scenes videos, we're supposed to be reading meaning into her face. Like, as if we can read her mental POV monologue, because they can read it when they're doing live table reads, and it makes sense to them then, so they go, well, of course, the audience, it must make sense for the audience. They don't understand that we can't see the directions behind these facial expressions. And you just saw more of that in this episode. So there's all these little sloppy details, like you see Jon... I'm sorry I'm all over the place. I'm going to make a separate Daenerys video specifically on that, because it's one of the two big separate videos I'm going to make are on Aria and the Night King, and on Will Daenerys Go Crazy, which, no, it's not going to be like this in the books. They wanted Emilia, and it's not because they're dark, it's not because they're sadists. They have no themes. This is a man who says themes are for 8th grade book reports. What did they talk about in the inside the episode for episode 5? Wow, they just fall back into, wow, Emilia's nonverbal performance is so great. And they have her giving a Nazi Nuremberg-type speech in this, which is out of character, and they wouldn't need to liberate the Summer Islands. They're one of the freest civilizations in the world. They don't have slavery. What is this supposed to be turning her into being? I've said before, what I think is one of the most hilarious things is that David Benioff is basically Book Cersei in personality. He's an utter narcissist. When you see his videos, you've seen how smug he is. Book Cersei is like that. That the ultimate irony, this is a big if, is if Daenerys doesn't randomly burn innocent people. If she shoots through human shields, that's still a rational decision. Other military commanders have done that. What if we open up Book 6, and Cersei is going completely nuts, and Daenerys is doing ruthless but rational things? That's a big if. And we find out that, wow, in the TV version, Benioff turned the character he's most like, because he's so blind to this, Cersei, into a sympathetic character crying about her baby when she doesn't care about anyone, and turned Daenerys into the villain, that he swapped them, so that Cersei would be the Mad Queen. That's a whole theory. I didn't want to get into it that much, I've already said it, just, it's sloppy. We don't know what's going to happen. And the little details, like how did Grey Worm get there ahead of Jon? And that doesn't even begin to cover all the sloppy things by the end of it. And after Coffeegate, you think they quickly review all of the footage from the final episodes. No, we can see water bottles next to everyone, multiple people at the Dragon Pit meeting at the end. It's just how little work went into this. The little things of it's still sloppy. It's even if this was a change you wanted to make, it was not coherent. And then Arya just disappeared. I'm not the only one pointing out. You played up the white horse so much. Even Maisie, if you haven't seen the game reveal video, and I know it's hard to watch at without putting your fist through your screen at how crazy Benioff is and smug. Even Maisie is like sarcastically going, well, I guess the pale horse is kind of symbolic. And then the horse is gone. It took you 2 extra years to make this, and it's really sloppy, and it's even the behind-the-scenes thing from last night, even like at the table read, you can see everyone going, this is just in their nonverbal reactions, like slowly realizing this is a crazy way to end the show. And it's just, how do you do a table read with such little dialogue? I have no idea. And the thing I was talking about at the beginning was, this just caps it all for me. This was the most memorable thing for me that night, because the rest was just stupidity. When Brienne is filling in the white book at the end, the book of the history of the deeds of the Kingsguard, they introduced it in season 4. Apart from the fact that they changed the prop, because this isn't what Arthur Dane's entry looked like before. Like, the artwork is different. It's weird. When she's writing all of Jaime's deeds, I came up with the name Battle of the Gold Road for the big dragon battle against the Lannisters in season 7. That they kept calling it, and at the time, you were all there. You remember, you saw the review sites going, does this battle have a name? And they just keep calling it the Loot Train Attack. Like, in their behind-the-scenes videos, it was officially called that in their filming schedule, in their scripts, because you have to go, what's this piece of equipment for? For the Loot Train Battle, all capitals. And I just put my foot down on the wiki and said, that is not an in-universe name. What if someone needs to refer to it like the Battle of the Whispering Wood or the Battle of the Blackwater? We're not going to use such a fan nickname for something as a thing. That it was the flippancy with which they treated it. Battles have names. And looking at a map that, okay, they say it's on the Blackwater River, a bridge over the Blackwater. It's not within sight of King's Landing. Well, what's the next major crossing up the river? Well, where the Gold Road crosses it. So as a provisional name for the arc, I said, I am not going to indulge your stupidity with this and call it the Loot Train Attack in the title, because we're supposed to be in universe. I made up an in-universe name, Battle of the Gold Road, because specifically, what if someone needs to refer to it in universe? They wouldn't call it that. And I'm watching this episode, and they called it the Battle of the Gold Road, not the Battle of the Northern Reach or any other name they could have come up with, or the Second Field of Fire. It is now, in canon, ascended fanon, the Battle of the Gold Road, as an official, clearly named event. In retrospect, that wasn't the writers even paying attention to or ripping off the wiki. It's the props department who do more work than they do, and I compliment them. That this has been happening for a couple of years, that they stopped with heraldry designs. They stopped ordering new heraldry from its complicated process of getting an artist in. And for the past few years, they've just been copying the heraldry fan wikis use, like the heraldry for House Stokeworth, or for House Mormont, the updated Mormont heraldry, House Reed's heraldry. These are fan designs they just copied. And I'm not complaining. That's why we made them. That's why we put them on wikis. This is a good design. Please use it. So it's whoever was writing up the prop of the White Book probably didn't want to call it something as ridiculous as the Loot Train Attack, Googled what was this thing, and came to Game of Thrones wiki that, oh, well, I guess it's called the Battle of the Gold Road. So Am I a writer now? I don't know. I'm probably more of a keeper of the lore at this point than Brian Cogman is. That we're the fan wikis, and it's, those obsessive fans. I mean, this is basic stuff. And I don't know what you do all day. If you're not writing dialogue, and you're not checking facts, what is your job? I don't know. So that was hilarious, that seeing Battle of the Gold Road, that they have fallen so low, that they're copying stuff I personally invented. Wow. So just all the sloppiness in general of, if you were going to have Daenerys do that, some people were holding out hope they'd give a reason for it. They didn't. And all these other little sloppy details falling into place in dreamlike fashion. Compare this to like the last episode of Sopranos or Breaking Bad, that it felt like they just stopped paying attention, even relative to earlier in season 8. That they were just running out the door, and isn't this something you'd spend 2 years getting the final episode details just right? And it feels like there was less focus on this episode, even than episode 5 or 3, the battle episodes. And yet they're still going, we'll be the next Breaking Bad, and they won't. I buried this point 3 because I don't really want to put that much time into it. Compartmentalization. Once we chose to do X, what choice did we have but to do Y? And this applies to anything and everything. I've seen so many reviews going, like live reaction reviews, the night it happened, going, once they turned Daenerys into a genocidal maniac without explanation last episode, what choice did they have for this episode to follow through on that? Yes, taking as a given that the last episode was ridiculous, all the parts leading up to Jon deciding he needs to kill her made sense within this 20-minute window. But I would talk about this in the comments, I'd see reviewers going, this episode made sense, because taking as a given the insanity of the previous episode, what else was going to happen? And it's because they cut at an arbitrary point. What if episodes 5 and 6 had been one big episode? You wouldn't be praising the part where it's logical that Jon would kill Daenerys. It's logical that Jon would kill Daenerys, who randomly goes crazy for no coherently explained reason. I've seen so many people falling back on this because they're in denial. It is not a co-equal, let's have a fun debate about this, or let's discuss it. It's, you are in denial about a show that has gone crazy. These writers are insane. So the compartmentalization, it's something people do in abusive relationships, in cults. It's, you are rationalizing. And it applies to every time they ever change anything. You see reviewers doing this. Please talk about this in the comments. That, once Daenerys went crazy last episode, what choice did it have to kill her in this one? So that part of the episode was well done. And, in terms of the camera work and the music, it was technically well done, I guess, but this applies to other things. Like, as you know, once we chose to marry Sansa to a rapist at random without clear explanation, what choice did we have but for him to rape her? You see, it's that compartmentalization, and they just deflect from, the first part of that is absurd, or Doran Martell. Once we chose for Aria to be a pro-war maniac, obsessed with revenge, what choice did we have but for her to kill Doran, who is secretly a Targaryen loyalist in the books? Stannis. Once we chose to focus on Jon Snow, what choice did we have but to randomly write off Stannis burning Shireen, even though for all we know in the books Melisandre will do that without his permission? Or, once we chose for Jaime to go back to Cersei, what choice did we have but for him to die with her in the Red Keep? It's just that level of they drank the Kool-Aid, this is a cult. And the number of major reviewers actually making these defenses is shrinking. They are a vocal minority. We're not, oh, you're the vocal minority of fans who are yelling about this. You are the minority of Entertainment Weekly types like James Hibbard, who they give you interviews and press passes, and you sold your souls. The handful, Ideas of Ice and Fire has talked about this a lot better than I can, remarking on just the handful of pitiful people trying to defend the end of the White Walker storyline or the end of the Daenerys storyline as a coherent narrative, as a coherent defense. They just start talking about Game of Thrones in general being great, empty platitudes. I have yet to hear coherent explanations for any of this, and just how silly he's really cut them apart a lot better than I can. Just how silly and pathetic they've become. And yeah, at the moment they dominate like convention panels and stuff because HBO invites them to do press stuff. But I am seeing so many other things, like Lauren Sarner did a great write-up in New York Post just tearing this apart. A lot of news outlets turned on this and are not playing the compartmentalization game anymore. So, well, the first part of the episode was good because the Daenerys going crazy made no sense. But once she went crazy, doesn't this make sense? You're compartmentalizing. It's a crazy storyline. And it just gets more and more reductive. Well, once the sword went into him, what else was going to happen? But he dies. It goes nowhere. That isn't coherent. And point 4, which is really the rest of this, the whole political situation in the South. Now, I'm not really upset by the series finale. I knew it was going to be bad. And I think of it as a whole. I think people were so bored or emotionally exhausted by the very, very slow pace of this episode, even compared to other episodes of the show, that they were just coasting along by the point we have Tyrion's trial and that new Great Council. But the Daenerys part's just the fallout from last episode, so the Tyrion trial and political stuff is the new thing in this episode to talk about. And if you're not too exhausted as days and weeks pass and we can pick this apart, it's gibberish. Other reviews have already pointed this out. I'll talk more about it and what I think will happen in the show versus books, but this was worse than anything in seasons 5 to 7. Maybe not as insulting, but still on the logic level. We get so numb to it, that's what I want to say. We got so numb to it. We're just waiting for it to end. But describe what happened. Tyrion gives a speech about how Bran Stark, of all people, should be the new king of the Seven Kingdoms. And in and of itself, that's kind of weird, but on paper, I can almost see someone arguing, well, because he's the three-eyed raven and has psychic powers, it'd be a good idea to have a king with other memory, like Frank Herbert's Dune. He's the God Emperor of Westeros, if you will. Loosely, you could almost see them arguing that, but they never really played up that Bran is a three-eyed raven now. What's the complaint even from casual viewers? He didn't do anything in the battle against the White Walkers. He did nothing the whole season. And had he done something really cool, like warging a dragon, killing the Night King, something, this might have had a little more sense. He didn't do anything. What was the actual on-screen reason they gave? Imagine if someone who had never seen the show was watching this cold and not just sucked into, well, you have to like it, it's the perfect show. Well, nothing is more powerful than a good story, and Bran has the best story. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Someone was saying this with a straight face. Bran has the best story, because good stories are powerful. Remember when this was a political show praised for its realism? Basel Ciel, I'm pronouncing that in French, had a great video I shared around, 10 minutes long, put it at the end of this one, just talking about the tone of the ending being bad, that the entire thing that made Game of Thrones special when it started it was like The West Wing or Sopranos in Middle-earth. It was realistic politics. And now it's pure fantasy of, well, he has such a great story. I have to do a wiki recap write-up for this. What am I supposed to say in the page on Kings of Westeros? Bran, elected king because he had the best stories? Imagine seeing that in text. This did not live up to the hype of the break the wheel thing that they invented. That isn't from the books. There is no speech about, I'm going to break the wheel and the cycle of tyrants. I'm not even sure what that even means. That was meant to be a tagline on a t-shirt. That it doesn't live up to that. Maybe if they had randomly shifted to a full democracy or something, that would have lived up to that, while at the same time being utterly unrealistic. And I accept that democracies evolve in stages. They wouldn't have suddenly shifted to that. That would be very unrealistic. But at the same time, it's going to be an elective monarchy. That doesn't live up to some massive societal break on that level that you were implying with that. And I hope people are starting to realize it's just empty taglines. And, we destroyed the Iron Throne and had Bran be king. They're canceling each other out there. So, I'm going to talk about this more in other videos, but on top of that, the North being independent was crazy. And I have relatives who watch the show and usually defend it, but when it came to this, they said that part was, quote, just bananas. North being independent is crazy for two reasons. First of which is, why not Dorne and the Iron Islands, which also have arguably stronger local independence movements. Dorne has only been part of the Seven Kingdoms for 100 years due to marriage alliance. The Iron Islands have been constantly rebelling. I mean, even if you don't pay attention to the books, Dorne is more in the books. On screen in the TV show, they've been mentioning the Greyjoy Rebellion, that in the War of the Five Kings, they were really an independence movement more than that Yara was asking Daenerys for independence. And that suddenly she just gives up on that when she's arguably got a stronger hand. Made no sense. And getting back to that break the wheel thing, they're acting like, oh no, it's like the end of Lord of the Rings, the Fourth Age is upon us. It wasn't an epochal moment where it's going to be the end of all war. First on the lordly level, we'll have an elected monarchy, which almost makes sense compared to, that's semi-plausible in the books, so they didn't really set it up, compared to, let's have the North be independent, because Sansa asked her brother for it, but Dorne and the Iron Islands don't. This won't be the end of all war. What if one of Sansa's descendants wants to go to war with the Southern Kingdoms? What if in a generation or two, a descendant of whoever's ruling Dorne now wants another independence movement? Nothing was solved, and they acted like it was. And even if it didn't solve anything, it's just no rational person would be doing this in universe. That Dorne and the Iron Islands just go, okay. And leading to point two of why is this crazy, they're going to play this up as Sansa being powerful when it really isn't. That she asked her brother, hey, can the North be independent? And he said, okay. There was no political leadership on her part. Sansa isn't a real person. I'm not criticizing her. I'm criticizing you don't know how to write a female character strong. Don't know how to write anyone, but just, they have all the visuals of her. It's like a ripoff of the Virgin Queen, of Queen Elizabeth I, and none of this is earned. She didn't do anything season 5 onwards, even though, like, after the Battle of the Bastards, they'll point the camera to her and have swelling music as if she did something. That's just the Kuleshov effect, that she isn't really this powerful figure. And you see Sophie Turner ranting about this. Thankfully, people are also criticizing what you're saying she's powerful because she was raped or something. And even her co-stars are complaining about that. I'll talk about that more in another video. Just, this wasn't her doing anything. It was as unearned as what happened with Bran, arguably more unearned. That didn't amount to anything. The costume was gorgeous, don't get me wrong. Michelle Clapton does amazing work, but it's like fan art for what the books will ultimately do. So, Am I worried about spoilers is the thing that could be upsetting a lot of people. I already knew the show was bad. I'm not upset that it had a bad ending. Okay, I already knew that was going to happen. So am I upset that they revealed spoilers? Well, how could Sansa or Bran possibly be considered a spoiler? I'm going to make a full video after this, independent of this one, on what has been spoiled for the books. And short answer, very little. I don't think anything since the end of Season 4 really reflects what the books are going to do, the future books, except for the one or two things like the Shireen thing and the Hodor thing, that if you skipped Season 5 entirely, if the trope of if someone had fallen into a coma after the Season 4 finale and woken up not even in the Season 8 finale, but in the last 5 minutes of this finale during that montage scene, they'd know just as much. That they wouldn't have lost anything, because nothing from Seasons 5 to 8 set up Bran being king or set up Sansa being a queen. They had no character arc. They had no narrative actions. So I've seen some of the handful of commentators still trying to defend this on Twitter and blogs, trying to pontificate with their English major interpretation of this. Oh no, well, you see, they raced through the bloated middle of Martin's book series to get to the cool ending, and it's really Martin's fault for running out of material, or no, HBO promised that they would give them more episodes, and they asked to have less. They did not run out of time, or book material. He told them outlines. They wanted to be done with this. This is their fault. Stop trying to look for excuses for the showrunners. This happened this way because they want it to be this way, and they are proud of it. When you see behind-the-scenes videos, they wanted it this way. For everyone saying, oh, well, they raced through the middle seasons and the middle books to get to the ending. That's what I thought they were doing it for a while, even. Oh, they must really want to do the White Walker War, and then it was done in a single battle. That objectively, Seasons 7 and 8 were more rushed than Season 5, which combined 2 books of material into a single season. How do you morons explain that? And you know who I'm talking about. Specific people. You're saying they were racing to get to the ending. The ending was the most rushed part of all. That was what was so weird. So what we got in that final montage was, at worst, a bullet point list of how they might end up. And just, oh, Sansa will be politically powerful in the end somehow. I kind of already assumed that from reading the books, so that isn't a revelation. That, again, the whole if someone had fallen into a coma, it was so genuinely incoherent, just unintelligible, that nothing would have been lost if I had skipped the intervening seasons. This is not a coherent story. It does not stand up as a TV show unto itself. People go, oh, the books are the books and the show is the show. The show is incomprehensible. And don't take my word for it. I'm just one guy. Oh, my frail deeds, I don't know how much they can do. Look at how big the wave of reviews coming in is. That no one can control that. People who love it, people who hate it. You can't control that there's dozens of negative reviews and just the tide is turning. That people really saw this negatively. How much is it turning? What'll that result in? I'm not sure. Still, I remember, like, one of the reasons I was so slow reviewing this, apart from I was doing a local convention, I had to prepare for that. Why was I feeling so blue after the finale, apart from how stupid it was? I wasn't attached to this. I had no emotional attachment to the Council of Surviving Characters at the end. It wasn't spoilers. I didn't have any positive or negative feelings about Brienne or Tyrion or anyone. And the Daenerys storyline was so ridiculous, you can tell the books aren't going to do that, or even if they do, it'll be in a way that makes sense, not in literally 2 episodes. Oh, by the way, Daenerys is crazy now and attacking innocent people. Care to explain that? They didn't even explain that in the TV show. They mumbled through some talking points, but have generally not even offered a coherent explanation of their change in universe. It seems to be ripping off some broad thing of what's going to happen. I do not think Daenerys is going to do this in this fashion in the books. I think she's going to attack through human shields, which, okay, that's what happens in war, not needlessly target innocent women and children because she feels mad. That scene exists to win Emilia Clarke an Emmy Award for making a rage face. So why was I feeling so blue about this? Jon and Aria. And I didn't know how to verbalize this until I saw a nice review by Red Team Review, who verbalized this, that when you see them saying goodbye for the last time, Jon and Aria, the camera work and the swelling music are so beautiful. And objectively, the cinematography is amazing. And the chemistry between these actors who've known each other for years, Maisie and Kit, and they're really saying goodbye to each other because this is the end of their project together. The chemistry they have is so great that, yeah, you get a little teary-eyed when Arya is saying goodbye to Jon Snow for what might be the last time. But if you think about it, intellectually, none of this makes any sense. Okay, maybe the part of Jon leaving to go to the Night's Watch after killing Daenerys, I don't think he's going to kill her like that in the books. I think even if he does kill her, it'll be a sacrifice, and no one will consider it murder. I think he'll if he does go with the wildlings, it'll be voluntarily. But even then, the Arya thing was just totally out of nowhere. Just, wait, why is she suddenly leaving? That was the craziest one, and I actually felt bad about that, even though the Arya leaving to explore stuff makes no sense. And I was trying to verbalize and realize it's the same shit that Battlestar Galactica did in its stupid finale. That the show went off the rails, it got worse. I compare them a lot because this is a show that just the writing got bad, because the writers weren't paying attention and wrote themselves in a corner. And so I'm making other comparisons to that tell me about this in the comments if you've seen the Battlestar Galactica finale, which, by the way, George R. R. Martin criticized mercilessly. He said, I have seen writing school students left beaten and bloody by handing in manuscripts that were better than this crap. That this is a terrible ending. But one of the things they did in the Battlestar Galactica ending was they've all gone to Earth, they're going to settle on a planet, and the father, Adama, Admiral Adama, says, I have to go now, and he gets on one of their short-range planes, and he goes off to live in the mountains as a hermit, away from the other survivors who were just living in a campsite on the surface. And it's just, he goes, I have to go now. And his son goes to another character, it means he's never coming back. And it's just, wait, why is he never coming back? Nothing set this up whatsoever. And you realize, and I actually teared up at that and realized it's a cheap shot to, in the finale of a show, have a character go off and the other characters might never see them again, because it's on a meta-narrative level. It's lining up with and paralleling how we, the audience, will never see these people again. That Tyrion and Bronn don't need to say goodbye to each other, so there isn't as much emotional tension in that scene. Because it's, hey, we're still going to keep having zany adventures in King's Landing, or what's left of it, versus that meta thing of, in-universe, Arya is leaving forever. Well, you need to think up a reason for them to be leaving forever to parallel that the show is ending. And they just put no setup into this. So it's what Battlestar Galactica did with that. It's what a couple of other finales have done, where you didn't set up why they're leaving forever. And this was just a cheap pantomime. It was melodrama to try to get some, and I fell for it. I must admit, because the cinematography is so good. Just, why is Arya leaving? You never set this up whatsoever, other than one scene 2 seasons ago where she just randomly goes, hey, what's west of Westeros? And maybe she would be traveling again because, yeah, you can make the argument she's not the kind to settle down. But I've seen other people arguing, no, she's the one who remembers her father, who remembers the pack survives in winter. I have to stay with the Starks. I don't know. I'm going to make a whole other video on that. But even if that happens in the books, the way they presented it in the show was totally random. That even if she doesn't stay in Winterfell and she goes to having adventures, why would she sail west of Westeros when she's never expressed interest in that, except for literally one scene 2 years before? So that's why I've been feeling kind of blue and unproductive since the finale here. That it really got me. Sometimes just a random thing gets you. That Arya leaving scene really got me. I fell for it, and even though my brain kept trying to say there's no reason for this to be happening, it's just the actors and their chemistry of saying goodbye to each other. And Jon leaving, well, I think one option is he might go off with the wildlings. He might be king. I don't think anyone really knows what's going to happen with him. There's a couple of options, and that wasn't even that stupid compared to what Arya was doing. It's just this beautiful shot. And, oh no, they're leaving forever. Gets you. But as time fades, as that sense memory fades, we'll sit back and realize even this doesn't make much sense, and I don't even know how much of the books it would spoil. So I'm going to make another video going, what was spoiled, just in longer form for each character going, this makes no sense. And then split off from those, one on Arya, basically saying, I'm not sure if this will happen or not, but it makes no sense. And then one on Daenerys, just going, this is so different from, even if it's loosely based on something from the books, no, she's not going to turn evil like that. That I think it's going to be him killing her to make Lightbringer, but we're not really sure. It's just even the literally one or two things that could happen in the books were so incoherent that they're really meaningless. They're not really spoilers. And I have no emotional attachment to any of these developments except maybe Arya and Jon, and the Daenerys thing was such major character assassination that mainstream news is talking about it. Not even entertainment news, but just really big complaints about you wrecked, particularly a female character. So the 4 points were, at high levels, the finale as an episode with them directing it was really showing off these performances and these faces with no dialogue. That's what writing is, where you're shilling them for Emmy Awards. Point 2, a lot of just, for a finale which you were allegedly slaving away over to get perfect, there were a ton of really sloppy things in it. From small things to like continuity errors or Grey Worm kind of teleporting around to the political stuff, or your props people not really researching why are people doing this. I took a name I made up. It was sloppy just on a couple of levels. Point 3 was the compartmentalization to explain the Daenerys part was good. In a month, no one will remember that this was a separate episode. They'll merge this and episode 5 in their minds, which is fine. It doesn't really make sense as a plot development. And point 4, none of the political stuff made sense, and I have no emotional attachment to any of it. And everyone's saying this now. That's the end of my series finale episode review. For the rest of this video, I want to address what happens now. What do we do going forward? Well, to start with, what happened on premiere night, right after it aired. If Battle of the Bastards is any precedent to go by, David Benioff was just camped out on his Internet Movie Database page for the series finale episode, hitting refresh over and over again to see if it got a perfect 10, like the final episodes of Breaking Bad. I just posted a video clip of this in that collection I made. I made a separate video, Benioff Responds to Critics. There's an actual red carpet video of him explaining this, that after Battle of the Bastards aired, he had a petty rivalry with Rian Johnson over, I can get a perfect 10 on IMDb, so I wasn't listening to critic reviews, I didn't check out what any of the fan reaction was, I was just checking to see if my IMDb rating was 10. And it got nearly that high in the 9s. That when he goes, I don't care about anything, there are some things he's admitted to open, I checked my score on this, and the day it aired, it started at a 4.5 out of 10, and within 2 or 3 days had leveled off to about a 4.3, where it has pretty much remained ever since, going on 2 or 3 weeks now after the finale. In case you can't tell, earlier in the video I was saying it was 1 week after the finale. I've been recording this in chunks. So right now I'm recording on June 12th, and that's actually a good thing because some news finally came out of. They just put out their for your consideration for Emmy nominations thing, These aren't things that are nominated. These are the things they submitted for nomination. And, mainstream news sites are reacting to them that they nominated, just they're so self-centered, all of the episodes they wrote. That Brian Cogman's episode, which was admittedly the best received and the best one of the season, episode 2, they submitted only the series finale, this episode, for best script. An upshot of which is they load, on the Emmy website, they load copies of scripts of nominated episodes. So this is how we managed to get a look at the script notes for Battle of the Bastards, for Mother's Mercy. So as I've been saying, all the staring is actually a paragraph full of explanation at the table read. When these nominations go up on their website by September, we will get a look at the crazy script notes that are a paragraph long for every scene of just staring at each other. So I will report on that in coming months as soon as we get a copy. That upshot is we get to look at what the hell was in the script for The Iron Throne. It might not even be nominated. I'm not sure. It'd probably get nominated. I hope it doesn't win. I hope there's a backlash finally, but who knows. But on top of, okay, they submitted theirs for writing, and it's kind of insulting to Cogman, who is loyal to them for, turns out, no reward. They nominated this episode. They put forward for your consideration for nomination for Best Director themselves. Because Benioff and Weiss self-directed this episode. And their explanation was, we micromanage everyone so much, leaning over their shoulder, that we might as well just do it ourselves rather and cut out the middleman, is how Weiss put it politely. And it almost makes sense of, we just be micromanaging them so much anyway. Well, you're admitting to that you don't take input from your creative staff. So they there were only 3 director teams this season, of course. There was Sapochnik, David Nutter, and Benioff and Weiss did the finale, and they nominated all 3 for different things put forward for nomination. And it's still, you realize you're saying you feel you should be in direct competition with Miguel Sapochnik and David Nutter. Just the arrogance of that they have no filmmaking training, no experience in cinematography. They didn't go to film school for screenwriting or camera work, and direction covers a couple of things, cinematography, editing, all of which, like the editing was sloppy in this. Just, you think you deserve a director award for this, but don't take my word for it. Just like TV Guide was making headlines saying, what, LOL, you think these terrible episodes deserve awards? I mean, all of season 8 was bad, but even relative to other parts of season 8, the worst parts were the ones they were directly responsible for. And I shouldn't be surprised, I'm not really. Other people are finally catching on that these men are arrogant bastards who are utter narcissists who think they're great at everything when they have absolutely no skill at anything and no training. So they put that up for best direction and best writing. They put up The Long Night for best cinematography, even though it wasn't a mistake that it was that dark. I have a whole video on that they wanted it that dark, and it didn't occur to them, oh, wait a minute, the audience can't see it. Because in their minds, you've seen those videos from that The Last Watch documentary coming out of what are the table reads like, and it's disturbing to see what I've been reporting on for a couple of weeks, that it's Cogman excitedly reciting, like book prose, a full paragraph of description of the character's mental states, which that isn't how screenwriting works. And they never learned that they truly believe this because no one told them not to. They're living in a bubble. That's the one they want nominated. It'll probably at least get the nomination. I, of course, hope it doesn't win, but upshot of this arrogance of submitting The Iron Throne is, come September, we will have a public PDF copy of what the script for this looks like. And I'm telling you now, it'll be filled with all these bizarre, hyper-specific, what's going on in John's mind and Amelia's mind. I'm saying the actor names, of course, but just, why is Daenerys doing this? What is your explanation of why she just burned a city? All that stuff. So that's coming, but leading into the next point of why was all of this happening, just looking back on the show, what I've been trying to say in my channel, that mainstream news sites like Entertainment Weekly, a couple of other the major fan sites like Watchers on the Wall, they're traitors and collaborators. It's access journalism. In return for getting to do interviews, they softballed them. They didn't ask them tough questions or want to research why is anything happening. No investigation was begun of why is Daenerys going crazy? Why is Stannis burning Shireen? Why is Sansa being raped? Why is Dorne like this? And it's not that I'm smart. Anyone else could have done this. That I kept thinking if this information was out there, someone would have reported on it already. And we barely scratched the surface. And I actually checked the DVD commentaries for Season 5 after Season 6. It's just them ranting about the actors' faces, and you realize when you go back and look over they don't have prior work experience, they don't have filmmaking degrees. They're con men and fanboys who fake their way into running the biggest TV show of all time, and because they're bad at writing dialogue, are riding the coattails of have Kit Harington make another brooding face, have Kit make another brooding face, to the point the pressure of the whole show was on Kit, to the point that he was saying by like Season 5 he was going to therapy for the pressure he was under. And just last week they said he voluntarily checked himself into rehab because he's been drinking so heavily from the pressure of all of his life was put into this show. And I consider this a big personal betrayal of the cast, because I like Emilia Clarke. I like Kit Harington. They didn't deserve this shabby treatment, and when you see that Emilia had that brain surgery problem in Season 2, they took advantage of everyone. And that's the worst part, that like a cult, you see them just defending it when people say, this doesn't make much sense, rather than defending the plot points. They just go, hey, how dare you criticize it? We worked so hard. That's how cults work, the sunk cost fallacy. So the Emmy Awards are September 22nd of this year. That's something to look forward to and report on, because I don't think they deserve to win, and follow the races on that on this channel. That normally, well, in the original prior seasons, even for like Peter Dinklage, they put him for Best Supporting Actor, which I think that's a better strategy. For an ensemble show, you play down into the lower category. You don't go for Best Actor. And last year they made a giant push to, for the first time, we're going to have Emilia Clarke as a Best Actress nominee, Kit Harington as a Best Actor nominee, not just at the Emmys, but at the Golden Globes. And it didn't work. They didn't even get a nomination last year at either one of those. And you saw in Season 7 what we saw in Season 8, just how much they were pandering out of character illogically with the White Hunt. Kit and Emilia, there's no dialogue in the White Hunt for 9 minutes. They're showing them off for awards. This was awards baiting, and it probably won't work now either. But who's to predict anymore? The Emmys are rigged. On top of that, there's sympathy for a long-running show versus you really don't deserve it, for this is the worst season they've ever had. I really think this is worse than Season 5. There's the other impact of, well, it's a series finale, final season has different expectations attached to it, but even Season 5, like Tyrion and Daenerys had presentable storylines. Cersei's storyline was serviceable. I can't think of a single good storyline from Season 8. Season 5 was more shocking because it was this sudden turn to getting really bad after Season 4 with Dorne and Sansa, but this is the worst season, even worse than Season 7, so. And on top of that, for the supporting actor categories, they're going to their usual ones of Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Peter Dinklage for supporting actor. Nikolai always gets shorted for these things when he puts so much into it that the showrunners do not respect him. And supporting actress, we got Lena Headey, Sophie Turner, Maisie Williams. Surprisingly, they also put Richard Dormer down for supporting actor. I think that was just to be nice. And they also put Gwendolyn Christie down for supporting actress. I think that was just to be nice. But these are the for your considerations. They're kind of a wild card that it'll sort itself by the time we hear the actual nominations coming out. And they put down Charisse Van Houten for Best Guest Actress for Melisandre. she deserves it, but I don't know what they're going to do. So this is what Game of Thrones was to them. It's awards that happen to have a show attached to them instead of a show that gets awards. And why did the show start going off the rails and not making explanations? And when you ask basic questions about the story, they deflect and go, well, I think this is what the actor is doing. Warm voice, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really give you a straight answer. I don't know if even they realize it anymore, that there is, and we see this in other shows. This was really bad awards baiting, and if things look bad now, I'm thinking in terms of Lord of the Rings fandom, on a scale of decades, we will teach our children to shame these men. That the way we talk about, bad cartoon adaptations of Lord of the Rings in the 70s is how we're going to talk about this. Time is on our side. The hype is gone. The hype of being the big show on TV is gone. It's not suddenly going to age well. We're already seeing that in the few weeks since the finale. So if you're new to this, a lot of new people came in looking for my series finale review. Please check out the rest of my channel if you haven't already. Just click most popular videos. The top 3 videos are the ones that, I think you should check out the most. They're popular for a reason. My big Stannis documentary, the one on the Battle of the Bastards, and the one on the Aria Braavos chase. And as people are saying in the comments, they're just as relevant, if not more, now than when I made them 2 years ago. The Battle of the Bastards one is really about how the behind-the-scenes production is falling apart and accepting as a given that this is the story they want. They don't know how production works, and it's a really good refresher before you watch that last night documentary where everyone's complaining like they don't know what they're doing, and this is an absurd schedule. But the Stannis one really goes into, because the actor outright did not play their game and get the Stepford Smiler thing. He outright said, this makes no sense. And it's me saying, you didn't like the acting. There was no acting if the actors themselves didn't know what they're doing. And the Aria one's really good, just it's another example of that whole chase scene is really what happened with the Night King, fundamentally, that you're showing off Maisie Williams. They're not Aria fanboys. They stunt cast Maisie Williams in her own role. They're Maisie Williams fanboys. So if you're going to go away and rage quit the show, if you stuck through this much mistreatment, please have fun watching the documentaries that tear them apart. And if you haven't already, those are a great starting point. My Stannis one has, at current recording, nearly 250,000 views, even though it's 2 hours long. So it's worth checking out. I hope that a lot of other people seem to think so. So my 3 most popular is Stannis one, the Battle of the Bastards one, and the Aria one. If you're looking for, now that it's summer, what do I check out now? And other reviews that I think did a better job than I did, that if you're not following them already, please check out these channels. First, Ideas of Ice and Fire, who I really think has become the soul of online fandom on the YouTube analysis group, of just trying to keep track of, we're book fans who thought the show could work and really believed in it, and just the sense of betrayal that, I'm, like John Adams, I'm obnoxious and unpopular, and I'm picking apart all these little things more eloquently and with more heart than I ever could. I think he captures the soul of what we're all feeling and thinking in his words. And 10-minute videos, just his finale review for the series finale, it was trending on the front page of YouTube. I mean, not among Game of Thrones people. I mean, if you log out and clear your cookies, it was on the front page of YouTube for a week. It got over 1 million views, and with good reason, just how mentally exhausted and used and cheated we feel. And he's got a lot of other good ones saying, this isn't Daenerys, this isn't Euron, this is pretty bad stuff. He's seen, my Stannis video and agreed with, they're showing off the actors. They even say they're showing off the actors. So I think he struck a really good balance and pretty even-handed there. Then you have a duo, Red Team Review and Preston Jacobs, who they've been treating this pretty intelligently. I really liked Red Team Review's analysis of the finale, which was actually trying to detach from emotion, trying to go over, okay, step back, what could they do in a finale on its own terms? He wasn't looking to tear it apart, but even being as generous as possible, he was still saying, this isn't a very good episode, this wasn't a good season. But not angry, just in all fairness, giving them all, is being as generous as possible. It still isn't possible to say this is good. And then you've got Anomaly Inc., who's new to this, but just tore apart Season 8. He did really great stuff. A mainstream media reviewer from, like, Star Wars stuff. It is refreshing to see that, no, this is... They managed, all the pro TV show fanatics managed to silence us in our little bubble of a Song of Ice and Fire fandom. But, like, when this spreads to Star Wars fandom, they will tear apart Benioff. His whole gaslighting us about, oh, why do you think I put rape in there? Oh, what, you don't think we should put rape in a TV show? You threw out a character's storyline, had her raped, and then didn't give an interview in public for a full year, hoping we'd go away. And then they just deflect from it. Just Anomaly Inc. tore that apart of, like, what the hell? You think we're just going to go away? But at the opposite end of the spectrum from Red Team Review is even greater than Anomaly Inc. is Mauler. Mauler's reviews, those have been very popular, tearing apart the show and just how absurd The Long Night was. And Westeros.org has even liked Mauler's reviews. And I want to close with, check out Westeros.org's videos by Elio and Linda. I deeply respect them and all their work for the books. I'm kind of upset that they stopped reviewing the show to criticize it, but they said, we already hate it, and I do sympathize that on a deep personal level, this was deeply disturbing to... Every time someone says, I want to put my fist through the screen when I see Benioff lying to us in the inside the episodes, I can see why that is so upsetting they cannot even bring themselves to watch it. And I don't blame them for that, but it's how we will eventually condemn him in memory, is by reviewing and pointing out this man is an idiot. That this doesn't stand on its own. And our work has... So moving on to the next section, our work hasn't ended. This is the point where we now, like the Chernobyl researchers or any other major crime, or Fire Festival, we get to make documentaries pointing out these are crazy people. This was not a legitimate TV show, much less an adaptation, in the hope that we get a remake in 10 to 20 years instead of 40 to 50 years, or at least a good prequel series set in this continuity. And if that sounds weird, I point to X-Men movies. Oh no, there will never be another attempt at adapting the Dark Phoenix storyline in live action. Yeah, right. So just... If someone says, oh, that's crazy, just, hey, X-Men. I think anything within 10 years is crazy. Don't get me wrong. Just, we'll see. In the immediate future, in that line, I really need to continue with my documentary series that I put on pause when Season 8 started. Who is David Benioff? That this is a persona he made of a successful screenwriter that he actually isn't, and just going through as much as possible, because public information is limited. He is objectively not trained or experienced and has no skill at this. And more than one person has said to me, he reminds us of Mike McFarlane from the Fire Festival. That he's just this rich idiot dilettante who's somehow son of a Wall Street banker who thought, wow, I can be a novelist, I can be a screenwriter, and faked his way through life. And that this wasn't a mature adaptation decision. He does things at whim. But you've seen some of these in the past week. I've posted 3 new ones, just little clips of his interviews where he's acting like a jackass. That he's incompetent, he's arrogant, and fundamentally he has the mind of a child. It's like a Trump thing, that he is a bratty, entitled teenager in an adult's body. And I don't mean that as an insult. That's what terrifies me. He is an impulsive teenager in an adult's body, and they just put him in charge of Star Wars movies. Like, spend an hour with him when he doesn't have talking points anymore, and you realize he's smooth-talking you. So I'm already continuing with that series. There's going to be some major new entries in that. Sorry to go into all this, just the review is done. I'm saying stick around for my channel. I already made a full dedicated video, I'm going to link at the end of this, on my schedule for the rest of 2019, which is a couple of major documentaries I want to make, some on book material, some on the failure of the show. a couple on Fire and Blood, which will be great. I didn't even manage to get through all of that. And, of course, any new prequel news that'll be coming out. This is the middle of June. They've probably started filming the Long Night prequel already. Who knows what news is going to come out. Speaking of which, I'm going to make a separate announcement on this, a separate video right after this. They announced that they're going to do Comic-Con in July 18th or so, and a month from now. Predictably, Benioff and Weiss aren't coming to their own panel again, just like they dodged the Season 5 panel after the Sansa rape and the Dorne stuff after Season 5. But for the first time since Season 5, George R.R. Martin will be coming to their San Diego Comic-Con panel in 1 month. Is it just to be polite to send off to he really feels for the cast and crew. He wants to be nice to them. But could this be some major announcement about prequels? I hope it's a Valyria prequel announcement. Probably, a Long Night prequel announcement of some kind. Dare we hope for an announcement of the due date for Winds of Winter? At the very least, 10% possibility. Maybe this is some Long Night prequel announcement. I don't know. Premiering a thing. So we shall see. But there's stuff on the horizon now. In the past week, they started scheduling out. We have a Comic-Con panel coming up in 1 month. There's prequel stuff. Oh, and speaking of prequel stuff, again, we're already doing a lot of reporting about that. The whole online fan community about the upcoming prequels. On my own channel, if you haven't checked this out already, please see the 2 big playlists I already made. Go to my channel, click playlists. The first one I made is on the one they have announced they're going to do a pilot for. I've titled the playlist, Why the Long Night Prequel is a Bad Idea, so that gives you some sense of what I'm going to say about it. And they said they'd be filming that in June 2019, so that's now. Past couple of days, past week or two, they're probably filming this now, and even more by the time you watch this, as we speak. So for all I know, we could be getting, spy reports, spy set photos, like tomorrow. I could wake up tomorrow and find some big report on that. So keep checking back by the day to see what's coming out. And maybe even more info on it by Comic-Con next month. But I have to stress this, the Long Night prequel is going to be a disaster. That if you're new to this, if you're only on it from the TV show, don't know the books, it's an inherently bad idea for a couple of reasons. First of which is Martin never wrote prequel stories in this era. There are other prequels that he wrote novellas for, and some that he at least rounded out, well, this is what the world was like in, Valyria and the Free Cities. Long Night is the most obscure prequel era. That it sounds important because of the White Walkers, but it's 8,000 years ago. Martin has said it's as far removed from us as Noah and the Ark, that they, unlike Lord of the Rings, where they go, oh yeah, that was 8,000 years ago, you really get the sense in the books. They know nothing about what the world was like back then. And it was also very limited. It was mostly primeval forest. It's like you just took the Jon Snow Beyond the Wall storyline, or the Bran one Beyond the Wall, where it's just forests, and turned that into a show that most of the locations don't exist, like King's Landing doesn't exist. And it's not like they're replacing them with other exotic locations. So there are some inherent reasons why it's a bad idea. The bigger one is this is really got the least amount of Martin in it. That he's openly said it's based on maybe a paragraph from The World of Ice and Fire, and you can really tell he would never have voluntarily set a prequel full TV show in this era. That it really seems like this is the prequel HBO picked because they want to latch on to all that hype about the White Walkers from the later Game of Thrones TV seasons. And look how that turned out. So my videos are going over that for a couple of hours of just, this is everything we know about the Long Night, so we'll be informative. But then, this is how little we know about it, and why this really was not a good idea for a TV show. And my playlist just goes over the public reasons why it's an inherently bad idea. Not even touching on all of the rumors I've heard from reliable sources, but which I can't talk about, that it's just a crazy TV show in general. That, as I said before, even people who never watched Game of Thrones, the TV show, much less people who read the books, It's just a crazy TV show in general, even if you hadn't seen Game of Thrones. But you'll find out about that soon enough. It's from the basic setup, like I'm pretty sure the pilot, once you see what their ideas are for it, that I've heard rumors about, that's going to end some careers, whoever picked that. And they're just blindly hyping it as it's the prequel. Well, no, there are other prequel ideas. That the only thing it has going for it is they hyped it as the prequel. So I have a whole playlist picking that apart, so you can be informed on that, of just these are the things that are going to be issues in that. But second playlist I have on one of the other prequel pitches is on the other idea that seems to be a front runner that's near production. They could say go and start making it, that it already has a full writing staff and everything. Empire of Ash, the Doom of Valyria prequel. I personally put out a big leak on it through the Game of Thrones wiki, that the series Bible leaked to Game of Thrones wiki. I had the Skype call for 2 hours where I was seeing the series Bible in great detail, and it looks amazing. It's like they're making The World of Ice and Fire the TV show. And I made 9 hours of content on it, but if you don't want to sit through 9 hours of stuff right away, I just did a small local con where I did a panel on the prequels, and I split up the video of the panel, so I have this 20-minute chunk succinctly explaining this is what the Valyria prequel is like, and going over these are the 3 factions in it, and it gives you a good overview. And then as the summer wears on, if you're looking for more content, because we don't have a show now, I made 9 hours of stuff on it, because it was an extensive leak, and I'm picking apart in the videos that I'm a historian, so I know Roman history, I know the novel, so point by point I'm going, well, this is what Roman history was like, and this is what the leak said about Valyria, and I'm pretty sure, like, they're basing this on the social war of 91 BC, so this is what happened in that, and look how it matches up to that thing that was said in the books here about, like, the books said they had colonies in South Orios, so this makes sense. So that's like 9 episodes of TV, but I really think it's worth it for the I've been making it over the course of a full year. I didn't go crazy and film it all in one night. These are 9 hours worth of documentaries I've been making since last July when the leak came out. So it's a long playlist there. Start with the short ones. It says the panel on what is the Valyria prequel like. It's a good 20-minute summary of that as a starting point. That unlike the Long Night prequel, that even before anything came out, just the very idea, if we're going to do a Long Night prequel, met with lukewarm reaction from pretty much everyone. A year ago, back when the White Walkers were cool. And now, I don't know what people are interested in, because Martin made a lot of prequel novellas, or outlines at least, for a lot of things, and this is the one you picked, the one that officially Martin has confirmed has no dragons in it. In contrast, Empire of Ash has generated a lot of excitement, that these are cool ideas, that even in the books we don't know much about Valyria, but it matches up with what we know about Essos and South Orios and things. So, Empire of Ash filled me with hope again. That I really think it's our best hope right now for we have a chance to return the live-action A Song of Ice and Fire franchise back to its former glory. Again, using the X-Men franchise example of there have been ups and downs, and right now we're in a bit of a down yet again for the X-Men movie franchise. But then X-Men's going to go over to Marvel and to Disney again, and they're going to do whatever. But there was a down point in X-Men with X-Men 3, and then, like, Days of Future Past and First Class are really good movies. So, on a scale of decades, we will rebuild from this. And one of the ways to do that is have a really good prequel in the tone of the books. And I really I had a good feeling about Empire of Ash, that they were really working hard at this. They were the first prequel idea that was pitched. They have all of this background research that is really respectful of the tone of the books, whereas Long Night's like, yeah, we announced it a full year ago. We don't have to tell you what it's like. So, that's what I'm looking forward to on that, but in the immediate future, the next project I'm launching into is I'm going to be making a review of that Last Watch documentary, which was just painful to watch, of just how much the crew sacrificed. And I'm going to be posting video clips of it. More than a few of you have probably seen my clip where I show Conleth Hill reacting to Varys' death, where he tosses the script down at just how bad the script is. It's filled with stuff like that. I mean, upsetting things. At the beginning, people who are enthusiastic about it realize and say in as many words, Benioff and Weiss did not know how to make a schedule, and this is absurd. And they went into it thinking this would be the next Lord of the Rings. I mean, season 8 alone, like The Long Night, was going to be the next Helm's Deep. So check that out soon. I got a downloaded copy. I'm going to be making highlight clips of it. Those will be fun. And right after that, I'm going to be making a series of short 20-minute or so videos on, did the show season 5 onwards spoil the books in any way? And I really don't think so for most characters. At first, an overview, will it spoil most things? The conclusion of which will be, I'm pretty sure it won't, except for maybe Aria or Daenerys, and then I'll make separate videos on, does this spoil Aria? Is this what Daenerys is going to do in the books? So that's what's coming up on this channel. Please stick around. Now that it's summer and the semester's ended, and now that I'm not backlogged with work from Season 8, a lot of new content I'm going to start cranking out now. That everyone else who's really zapped and upset by Season 8, they're where I was 3 years ago when I realized after Season 6 and watching the commentaries just how crazy Benioff and Weiss really are. I can't think of another comparable situation. There are, like, directors I've disagreed with. Like, Rian Johnson is a director I disagree with. I don't think he's a crazy person who faked his way into running things despite not having a degree in cinema. Or film writing, which there's videos of Benioff boasting, I lied to Martin to get this job about my qualifications. So, moving ahead, I already knew he was crazy, and I was just giggling through most of Season 8, because it was them falling on their face. I wasn't discouraged, except by one or two things like, oh geez, is this an Arya spoiler? Other than that, I knew it was bad going into it. How many people were hanging on to blind hope that the finale would redeem the past 4 years of crappy writing? I'm not surprised, like, again, to turn to Battlestar, there were people who hung on to false hope that the Battlestar Galactica series finale, like the finale episode, would somehow fix everything. And then it didn't. So, like that, the cord snapped. A lot of people weren't happy with how Game of Thrones was going in its later TV seasons, but didn't speak out because they were in a mix of shock and denial. Maybe the next season will be better. Maybe the next season will be better. Maybe the next episode. Maybe the final episode. And now it's hit them. There is no promise of another do-over. And now the shock and denial are wearing off, and they're poised to openly turn on it. Actively speak out against it. I mean, you're seeing all of these reviewers, I mean, mainstream reviewers like Angry Joe, that don't normally cover Game of Thrones, and there was this huge explosion of reviews, I mean, for those who've been on YouTube, like right after the Long Night episode. It wasn't even after the first 2 episodes, which were decent. It was after that Long Night one, like, people were making reviews of that never covered Game of Thrones on an episode-to-episode basis. Mainstream stuff. And for the ending as a whole, for this finale episode, just last night, for those of you who are not in the United States of America, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah was just on last night, and I'm just randomly watching The Daily Show, and as a side joke, he goes, quote, a lot of bad things happened lately, like that shitty Game of Thrones ending. That just openly mocking, he called it a shitty ending. That this has become part of the pop culture osmosis, the pop culture lexicon of this is now infamously bad. This is beyond any one person's ability to control, that the tide has turned against it, just on a societal level. And people are openly saying this. Things have changed, measurably changed, Since after season 5, when we were saying Dorne isn't like this and the Sansa storyline makes no sense, the Stannis storyline makes no sense. Stannis is a brave man devoted to his duty. He wouldn't act like this is crazy. Even the actor was complaining. There are problems with this show, and people would just gaslight us. Oh yeah? Let's see you try to run a show. Oh yeah? You're just being a contrarian book fan. As a TV viewer, this makes no sense. And just... oh, well, what was going to happen? You can't criticize a perfect show. We have been experiencing that since 2015. There were problems before that. The really insane stuff, we've been being gaslighted for 4 years. With Sansa, with Stannis, and you see them even trying to go in slow motion on this with Daenerys again, just as they did to Stannis. It's not going to work. That we have slowly but surely been building up, people gradually realizing, actually watching interviews Benioff and Weiss give and realize these are idiots. I could never have done as much damage to them as they did to themselves with those absurd inside the episode clips. That's why we hate them, because they're incompetent idiots, and because they're incompetent, they'll eventually put their foot in their mouths. Just openly going, oh yeah, this is an idea I came up with spur of the moment only 3 years ago as I was writing season 7. Aria killing the Night King. Or, Daenerys kind of forgot. Or I guess it was so embarrassing. There are multiple parodies of the inside the episodes now. I don't know if there was originally intended to be an inside the episode for the finale or not. Some people theorize that they yanked it at the last minute because HBO realized how embarrassing they were. I'm not sure because the damage was already done, and I think they just didn't want to do one because it was the finale. But it's telling that I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I don't think they did, but they might have, that they were that damaging to their public persona. And because so many more people are watching it streaming now than were in 2015, just year-by-year growth. Millions, literally millions of people were watching the episode, because the inside the episode, when you're streaming, it comes on right after the end. It's not a separate program. Literally millions of people saw that. It got massive circulation of just how idiotic Benioff is. And that really did have an impact. Things have changed, are changing, relative to 2015. You have to keep a sense of perspective. Every year we gain a little. Benioff is an arrogant, hubristic idiot who will always overreach himself. His self-confidence knows no rational bounds. And like the Freys or the Boltons that makes him, in the books, that makes him stupid and ultimately defeatable. I mean, a smart con man would have taken the money and run long ago. The smart move would have been to go back to novel writing or go to some minor art house movie projects here and there, at least in the immediate near future of 3, 4, 5 years. But he can't. He's addicted to the fame of it, that he immediately needs to launch into another big labor-intensive project when people are saying, just the physical strain of working on a major film project, you look like you've aged 10 years. I mean, I'm not the only person saying that. It's just other people are trying to quit this, or retire, rather, simply from the strain of these pulling 18-hour days all the time. They can't quit. And it's not even a matter of skill or people yelling at them. Even if they were good at it, the physical toll of this, they can't give it up. It's an addiction to fame. Benioff couldn't just quit while he was ahead. So, in terms of my thoughts for the future, he's making the stupidest and most self-destructive move possible. Getting signed up to make Star Wars movies. A large and well-established fandom which has what I call fandom infrastructure to truly report on and scrutinize his performance. Game of Thrones was the first big live-action adaptation of a book series that didn't have this fan infrastructure in place of having fan sites for the TV shows. The book fandom didn't really have something prepared for this scale, and by the time it got that big after the Red Wedding, quickly started turning on the show, because that's around like season 5 when Benioff was going crazy, they got disgusted and left. But the book fandom will see a resurgence once Winds of Winter comes out, which I hope is sooner instead of later, haha. But what happens when book 6 comes out and we find out Daenerys, a lot of these characters, I don't know if the Daenerys parts will be this soon, but like the Stannis and Sansa parts happened nothing like this. What if Stannis and Theon kill Ramsay? I don't know, but there will be a massive rebirth in just the scale of book fandom and in activity on fan sites and rebuilding from this. Everyone will gather together again and rebound from everything. At the time, because it was the first big fantasy, large-scale TV series live action on this scale, there wasn't that infrastructure. So, in contrast to that, Star Wars fandom is hitting the ground running with them. You see what I mean? That there's a literal cottage industry of people reporting on Star Wars projects they don't like. So that, the talking points we get bludgeoned with of, oh, you don't like the Sansa rape in TV Dorn in Season 5? Then, why do you care? Why do you care? Watch something else. Hey, why are you even reporting on this? Why do you talk about a show you don't like? Watch something else. That won't work with Star Wars fandom. I mean, major fan-run commentary sites and podcast channels, which are truly established businesses unto themselves. Imagine someone telling them, oh, you didn't like The Last Jedi? Then why are you talking about it at all? Why are you watching a show you don't like? Why are you watching a movie you don't like? Oh, you didn't like Rogue One? Imagine if someone really said, oh, you didn't like Rogue One? Then why are you writing about it? To like one of the major Star Wars channels with like 1 million subscribers on YouTube or something. That's crazy. No, that isn't going to happen. It's so much of a bigger fish. Game of Thrones didn't have that fan infrastructure when it started versus the longest running established major franchise fandom on that scale. So, going into Star Wars movies was the absolute worst conceivable move David Benioff could have made, because he is an idiot. They will put him under a microscope and give him the heavy scrutiny he's deserved. Star Wars fandom will devour him. And that's not empty boasting. You're already starting to see that. In the 3 weeks since the series finale, look how many Star Wars news channels that weren't covering him are now looking at all of this evidence we've known of for 3 or 4 years now of, you did this with Sansa, with Stannis, you said this bizarre thing in an interview, you actually don't have a screenwriting degree, you don't have a cinematography degree, but insisted on directing the finale yourself? So, I mean, they timed their big announcement about our movies are the next Star Wars movies for the week after the Long Night episode aired. And from all evidence, it seems they genuinely thought people would be impressed with that episode instead of horrified as they were. Instead, the effect was to frighten everyone that, dear God, the morons who made this episode are making the next Star Wars movies. They did more damage to themselves with that than I ever could. So, now we're seeing Star Wars news channels starting to research who the hell Benioff is and actually checking out content like mine, behind-the-scenes reports and documentaries explaining how much of a fraud he is. So, I'm begging you all, don't leave now. Now the day of reckoning is at hand, when Benioff will get what's coming to him and we can at least try him in the court of public opinion and expose him for what he is. And maybe just holding up, this was not a TV show. This was not an adaptation I disagree with. This was Benioff playing favorites with actors or rewriting character arcs because of his own insecurities and bizarre home life, which it lines up with stuff when he talks about, oh yeah, I kind of see Tywin as my dad, and it just the weird stuff he's done. This is not a stable person. And so you go, oh no, it's his vision. He didn't sit down to make adaptation decisions in a writer's room. There was no writer's room of other writers. He micromanaged everyone and made changes basically because he felt like it at whim, just showing off actors always at the last minute. I mean, that quote from the inside of the episode, oh yeah, 3 years ago, as we were writing season 7, I decided that Aria would do this, and just seeing these news sites in shock trying to argue, I guess they must have come up with this change to make Aria the one that kills the White Walkers. Must have been around season 4-ish when they went off book for the first time. It was a last-minute decision. So people are going to realize that, and I really hope we get people rumbling about a remake after a long-running successful prequel show, like a 5 to 7 year 10 years from now. I hope we start talking about that as opposed to 50 years from now. But who knows? But hey, the fans want it. Follow if the money is there. So I'll leave off for now by not saying goodbye, but this is not the end. This is the beginning of a long process of taking back what's ours and getting justice with fire and blood. And I look forward to the great new prequel eras unfolding on TV in the months and years ahead. Please stick around and subscribe to my channel for up-to-date reports on everything, because we are getting news on a daily basis.